Hello humans, it's not Martine. I've been waiting to say that for so long. It's Ruby, this is Ruby Red, and today I am so excited to bring to you yet another of the 12 TBRs of friendship. If you don't know what I'm talking about, my dear friend Martine has been putting together 12 TBRs of Christmas every year for the last several years. I don't know how many, 5. And it is a project that they work on for the entire year. They read so many books to put together these 12 videos that come out on Christmas and then for the 12 days. And they're so fun. They're so creative. Every video is like more outlandish or like exciting or hilarious than the last. And it's such a fun project to watch like come together in cryptic messages from Martine like throughout the whole year, and then to see the final videos. And I just know that Martine puts so much work and heart into all of those videos. And so this year I gathered a group of fans of Martine to put together 12 more TBRs of friendship that we have been releasing every day since the end of the 12 TBRs of Christmas. So these videos are all in honor of Martine, and I'm going to link the playlist down below that will be updated with all of them so that you can catch up if you missed any of them. All of my co-conspirators and Martine will be linked down below as well. So check them out, and I'm really so excited to finally be bringing this to the world because I've been wanting to for a long time. So I guess maybe you guessed from the title, but this is part 1 of the buzzword reading challenge. So I did go ahead and take on the first half of this year's buzzwordathon. There are 6 months in half the year, so there are 6 books in this video, just the words title one, not the cover one. That's the situation, and now let's get to the books, eh? So first up, January. All right, January's buzzwords were truth and lies. And so I read The Tragedy of True Crime by John Lennon. This is a true crime sort of book, but written by John Lennon, who is in prison. And he's in prison for murder. And he's been in prison for decades. So he sort of became a journalist during his time in prison, and he's been writing articles from prison for, you know, magazines and stuff about prison life and that kind of, you know, that's his that's his angle because that's his life. And so now he's finally written a book. Not finally, he has written a book, and I didn't know a thing about him, and I haven't read any of his journalism pieces, but I have read his book. The book is telling the story of himself and 3 other men that he's gotten to know while in prison. All of them have committed a murder. They're all in prison for murder. And the book tells the story of each of their lives sort of leading up to the murder, and then what's happened to them since they've been in prison, and how some of them have really, against all odds, experienced like massive amounts of growth and have really come to understand, you know, what happened in a better context. It's about some men who have really been able to own their violent crimes and sort of how they did that and why it's so important, and how it was so against the odds, and all of the forces that were pushing back on them, and all of the forces in prison that are trying to just like push everyone like down, and how violent and hard it is to live for so long in the prison ecosystem. He doesn't at all, I didn't think, try to justify any of the murders. I think he wanted to explain them from the perspective of the criminal. I mean, again, it's a commentary on the true crime fascination also, and how that has negatively impacted some of the men in the book. and he doesn't seek to explain away their crimes at all to justify them, but to sort of give the reader like an understanding of the kind of worldview and like life that can lead you to this idea that violence is the only solution to these problems, and that speaks to larger like social systemic problems that, you know, hopefully we're all kind of aware of, but seeing them really laid out in this book, I thought it was very, very strongly put together. It was heartbreaking. It was very hard to read at times. I wish that I had maybe not chosen to read this while also sitting on the grand jury. I read this literally in the jury room, and I was sort of trying to like hide. I was reading it on my Kindle, even though I had a physical copy from the library, because I didn't want people to know what I was reading, because I didn't want to seem like some true crime fanatic who's like so hyped to be, you know, getting a front row seat to like some of the crimes in my county, because that's not at all how I feel. But I really thought it was a very good book. I don't know. I think if there had been maybe one or two more passes from an editor, it could have been phenomenal. But it was just very good. You know what I mean? So I'm glad I read it. I do recommend it. I think, again, like I said, it was hard to read, but he really touched on a lot of different, you know, different issues and the ways that true crime sort of manipulates perception of criminals and of crimes, and how that can kind of have a, like, it can sort of prevent rehabilitation, like the growth that you need to have as a person to understand that actually violence was not the answer, and like, you know, the whole situation that you were involved in when you committed a murder, like that whole thing was so messed up and wrong, and like you have to gain certain skills to be able to avoid that in the future, to not find yourself back there. There's just a lot of work that you have to do, I think, to overcome within yourself committing a crime like that, and the impact that you've had on your family and the victim's family, and obviously like you literally ended a life, so that's pretty intense. And this, he really wrote about like coming to terms with it in a very good way. So I thought this was a great book. I'm glad that I read it, and I think Martine would like it. Oh, hey, I finished the February buzzword pick. Now for February, the buzzword was any word relating to water words. And I read The River Has Roots by Amal El-Motar. And it has the word river in it, so that's why I picked it. And because it's really short, and that seemed like it was gonna hit the spot right now. This is a book about a river, so very topical, very related to the title and the buzzword. This is almost a fairy tale. It's just about 100 pages. I know that this is one of the authors of This Is How You Lose the Time War, which I'm very interested in reading, especially after really enjoying this, because I did really enjoy this. It is sort of a fairy tale. It's about these two sisters who sing every day to the two willow trees that are on part of their family's like generational property that border like fairy land. The willows sit on either side of a river that flows from this fairyland sort of place into our real world, if you will. And they sing to the willows, and the river sort of carries magic with it. And there's the interesting bits about this, because I really can't explain the plot because that will just be me telling you the whole story. But the magic of this world is grammatical. It's almost like if you took the same sort of magic ideas that Babel has by R.F. Kuang. It's only comparable to me because I don't know that I've read any other fantasy that uses language as a magic in this way. Because in this book, they're using grammatical structures and the way that different grammar can, and it's not just grammar, it's also word choice and other meanings of the same word can change the meaning of a whole phrase, and you could use that to create a riddle, for example, and then that riddle kind of would act as a spell. It's very whimsical and short. It was also a little bit devastating, I will say. I did feel some strong feelings by the end of it, which I think is really impressive for the length, but because it's so zoomed in on just these two sisters and their relationship with each other and their duties, I guess, singing to these trees and their, just like their duty to each other. I don't know. It was really good. So I'll be back once I've read whatever the heck I'm supposed to read for March. I'm back. In March, the buzzword was thing. And so I read Everything is Tuberculosis, The History and Persistence of Our Deadliest Infection by John Green. This is a book, context, this is a book that is actually, I think, one of Martine's favorites of this year. I have that intel. So that really, really pushed me to pick it because I was like, wanting to make this Martine themed as much as possible. And I was interested to read it. I had read everything John Green wrote up until like The Fault in Our Stars. I didn't read anything he wrote after that. And I haven't read anything Hank wrote, but I was a Vlogbrothers stan from 2007 until like 2012, I would say. I was like dedicated to their YouTube channel. Anyway, I really didn't like this book. Ooh, sorry. I feel really actually very bad about it, but I have spent a lot of time thinking about like what exactly made this book so not good for me, and I'm gonna tell you because I think it could, I don't know. Look, I'm a hater at this point, and I'm gonna try to justify myself, and maybe someone out there will feel heard, or you guys are gonna be mad at me, or maybe this will let somebody else know that they should or shouldn't pick up this book, okay? So my complaints for this are gonna fall broadly into 3 categories. I guess also my complaints about this book are gonna include sort of a review. So I will say what the book is about. But they're also there are things that are my problem. These are things about the book that made me not like it, but they are not things that make the book inherently bad in any way. I didn't like it, but that's me. The first is the size of the book. The second is the marketing of the book. And the third is the structure of the book, I think. So, size-wise, this book is tiny, and I believe that the entire publishing team knew that this was not enough book to be a book, and they just published it anyway because they knew it would sell and everyone would love it because everyone loves John Green. It's under 200 pages. Hear me out, okay? Hear me out. It's short for a book, okay, under 200 pages, but it's small, okay? The page size itself is small. The margins are enormous, and it's practically double spaced. The words are so far apart in this book. Like, if it was formatted in a more traditional way, the way that many other books, especially nonfiction books, are, it would have been like 100 pages, and it wouldn't have been published because it wouldn't have been enough book. It would have been like an article, or So I take issue with that. I think this should have had more book. I do think it's a great entry point into reading nonfiction if you haven't read any nonfiction and you are scared of it. It's intimidating because the words are so small and close together, particularly, or just because you don't, it can take a different, approach to read nonfiction and like it. Then, great entry point. But that's not where I'm at, so that's why I didn't like it. Second issue, marketing, is sort of, I guess I'll talk about this in combination with the structure of the book. This book has been pitched as a book all about tuberculosis, the history of it, And through the marketing especially, it's emphasized that like tuberculosis is connected to everything. And John has made lots of videos. I don't follow him on any platforms, and I saw loads of these videos of him, you know, oh, how is X, Y, and Z connected to tuberculosis? Well, I'll tell you. And then sharing an interesting little tidbit. And so I really thought that the book was going to be loads more of those and going much deeper into the historical significance of tuberculosis. It does touch on the historical significance of tuberculosis. It's a lot about healthcare equity and access and pharmaceutical ethics and systems of oppression. It is mostly, I would say, the story of a young man that John met in Sierra Leone who had tuberculosis and had a particularly rough go of, I mean, not even particularly rough, but comparatively, like, I think many people have a tuberculosis experience like this, and this one person is somebody that John, you know, built a relationship with, and so wrote about, telling his story, which is important and like worth telling, and it was used to illustrate a lot of the sort of pitfalls with tuberculosis treatment, whatever. But then the historical tuberculosis bits were just like asides from that story. So it was like mainly almost a biography with like some additional, you know, scientific and historical context thrown in. I wanted it to be a historical scientific book about tuberculosis with like maybe a little bit of personal story thrown in. But so the balance to me was way off. And this is the marketing bit. Pretty much all of the fun is the wrong word to use here. The really, you know, surprising and interesting historical bits and bobs about tuberculosis, I knew from the promo videos and tweets and stuff. Like, all of the, you know, here's how everything is because of tuberculosis, like, all of those that are in the book are also online for you to see. So if you were really up on the marketing of this book and the promotion of this book, like, you saw all the content about it, you know all of that. So you're gonna read this, and the only things in here that you don't know, I think, are the bits about this one particular man, and his personal tuberculosis journey. So that was hugely disappointing. And I think the reason that this book was not what I wanted, the reason John Green didn't write the tuberculosis book that I wanted to read, is because that book has already been written. It was cited multiple times in the footnotes of this book. I'm not gonna be able to pull up the title of it immediately. I'm probably interested in reading it someday when I have a little more distance from this book. But yeah, this huge letdown. I'm so sorry. I really think John Green should stick to fiction, and I think he could have used everything he learned about this tuberculosis situation to write a really phenomenal fictional novel that maybe would have gone over better for some readers, namely me. So again, all of that is just my personal feelings and problems with the book that I read. I did have really high hopes for that book, so maybe if I had had less hopes about the book, I wouldn't be so disappointed, but I really didn't enjoy reading it. And I am glad that it's over. I'm really sorry to everyone who loves that book. I don't get it. And I'll be back once I've read whatever the next book is. Sorry. What month is it? March? April? June? Where are we? The buzzword is animals. So I read a book with an animal in the title, which was Cloud Cuckoo Land. And fun story about this book. It was personally recommended to me by Martine. In fact, I purchased this book with Martine. That's right, we were browsing a bookstore together on a little trip to celebrate our bestie Lizzie getting married. And Martine was like, Ruby, you probably would really like this book. And I was like, okay. And so I bought it. And guess what, Martine? You were right. I did really like that book. I loved that book. I guess I should say I'm still feeling a little bit bad about the rant review that I gave about tuberculosis, but I do stand by everything I said. But I do feel guilty. Just know that. But this book was phenomenal. This book was so good. This book is it follows 5 characters, basically. 2 of them in, during the fall of Constantinople. Okay, the Ottoman Empire, is that even right? And one of them is from inside the city. She's living inside the city. And then another is like somebody who lives far away and is living a different life. And then there's also a younger man. There's like another, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil how all the things connect, because all the things did connect in some way. So then we also follow a man named Zeno, and he like is born in the 40s, I guess, and lives in Idaho. And then another person living in Idaho, Seymour, who's younger. And then Constance, who's like in the future. I think that's everybody. And we got different perspectives, and so it's called Cloud Cuckoo Land because each of these stories, each of these people is heavily influenced by this book, this story of Cloud Cuckoo Land. And it was written in ancient Greek, and so like one of our main characters, Zeno, is somebody who's been working to translate it, and you sort of get to learn how he got there and what all that's about. But like, so between all the chapters, you're reading excerpts from the story. So you're getting the story, all the characters are experiencing the story in their own ways, and like the way everything sort of comes together, like it was phenomenal. Probably going to be one of my favorites of the year, to be honest. I really liked reading it. I loved the writing. I'm really excited to read more from Anthony Doerr now. Doerr? It's probably Doerr. And I cried multiple times, which is not that rare for me, but like there was just a lot of emotion in this, and it's just like, it's a book about books in some way, a book about stories and like the power of story. I really, really liked it. And I think if you liked The Overstory by Richard Powers, for one, also the Emily St. John Mandel book, Sea of Tranquility, both of which I loved. So if you liked those, you'll like this. There's another one that I'm thinking of that sort of ties in. I can't remember it right now, but anyway, love this book. And I want to like gush about it some more, but I'm really not wanting to, I don't want to say too much, because the way that things unfolded and the way that you get to know certain things about different characters, like I just thought was masterfully done. So I don't want to mess with that if you're going to read it. So really happy to have such a huge win for this, because that was such a good book. Okay, and I'll see you soon. Me again. Hi, I finished another book, and I got a haircut. So the book that I finished for this month's prompt, which is the April prompt, I need to remember to look at this chart before I sit down here. Wow. Okay, well, I'm almost out of chances. This is the April book. I mean, the April buzzword. Okay. The buzzword for this month, which might be April, is to or two. So T-O or T-O-O. I feel like if I was making this buzzword readathon, I would have also added TWO, just like I would have done that, but that's not part of it, and that's fine. So I searched my Goodreads TBR shelf because I have been trying to stick to books that I did actually want to read for this. So the only book on there that, well, I guess there was some that were like the subtitle of a nonfiction included too, but this is the only one where like the actual title had two in it. And it felt Martine Martine-esque, maybe it's a better way to say that. It felt Martine-esque to pick this one because me and Martine share a love for Alexis Hall, and I know Martine has read this and I think rated it highly, and that is Paris Dalincourt is About to Crumble. 4 stars. Excellent, excellent, good. Great rom-com. Love a baking show rom-com. So this is the second book in this Fake Expectations series that Alexis Hall has written. The first one was Rosaline Palmer Takes the Cake, maybe? And Audrey Lane Stirs the Pot is the third one. So anyway, it's like, and this book, we follow a new cast of characters on the next season of the show from the first book, Rosaline Palmer, and they actually kind of reference some of the characters from the first one. So I wish that I had read them closer together, and I'm gonna try to remember to read the third one soonish before I forget all the details about this season's characters. So our main character is Paris Dalencourt. He is not well. This boy is anxious and not dealing with it. And his friend signs him up basically to be on what is essentially the Great British Bake Off, but like a fake version for a book. And there he meets fellow cutie pie baker, Tarek. And so the book is about their relationship growing, but more importantly, Paris Dalencourt's self-growth. You know how it is. This book was hard to read at times because of how anxious Alexis is. I mean, God, how anxious Paris is. Why am I doing this? Alexis Hall writes such good, like, mentally diverse characters, and also such a wide array of queer characters and different kinds of queer identities are always present in his books, which I really like. And you know, different mental health sort of struggles and perspectives. And so Paris, like, being in Paris's head at times was like really tough, because I mean, at least I immediately was like, this guy needs help, but he can't see that. And then watching him like start to interact with somebody that he kind of has a crush on, that became like really frustrating. And I don't know, this brought some feelings up for me because some of his internal monologue felt a little too familiar, if you know what I mean. And also some of the way that people were reacting to him, like, because you know what's going on in his head, you understand why he's acting the way he is, but from the outside, without that internal monologue, you're like, what's wrong with this guy? And so I feel like I've been both parties in this, and so that was kind of tough, but also like, I liked it, okay? I liked it. It did get like progressively harder though to tolerate him. It got a lot harder to read as we progressed through the story and through the, you know, the arc of the plot. And there did come a breaking point. And frankly, like I wanted to stop reading it almost. I think it would have been a lot harder for me to get through that really intense part if I was eyeball reading it, but I did listen to it. So that was fine. I don't know, it felt realistic. It felt real that like his mental illness would sort of escalate based on sort of situations happening to a point where there was a breaking point and he would have to like admit that there was something going on and that he needed some help. So eventually you do get that relief, like an amount of relief, but it was rough. But I really liked the way that it wrapped up at the end, like everything, it was all really good. And I really liked it, and I'm glad I read it. I put off reading it for a while. I've just been feeling like, because I knew that it was about a character with anxiety, and that, like I said, sometimes it's hard to read. But I read it, and I liked it, and soon I'll see you to review the book for the month after this, which I believe to be May. Okay, the buzzword for June is memory words, and this one gave me so much trouble. I was scouring the web for a book with memory words in it that I wanted to read, and I actually DNF'd I think 4 different books for this pick before I finally finished something, and that was Volatile Memory. I forget the author, but ta-da! This book is a novella. It's the first sort of novella, sci-fi novella in a duology. I'm not going to be completing the duology. I didn't like it that much, but I liked it fine enough to finish it. I found this book just by actually searching memory on Libby and like scrolling until I found something that seemed good, and it actually was good. It was pretty interesting, and I am trying to make this very Martine themed. I did search Martine's read list on Goodreads for memory words, and there was nothing there that really interested me or that Martine had rated super highly. So this is just like a random sci-fi, you know, and Martine to me is kind of a sci-fi girly, so that's how we're making this about Martine. It doesn't have to be about Martine. It's about Volatile Memory, okay, which was a sort of like, was it a romance? Was it a thriller? I don't know. It was about this trans woman in space who's like a scavenger. So she just like flies around to different planets, like scavenging for tech, basically to sell. Because even in this space world, the corporate federation or whatever that runs everything is not kind to trans people still. So she has to live kind of like on the edge of society. And she gets a call or something. Anyway, she ends up scavenging this mask. Everybody wears a mask, you know, a space helmet that is also like, they're all animals. And when you're wearing it, you know, through neural linking or something, there's, you get some of those instincts or abilities. So if you're wearing ox or lion or something, you're gonna be stronger. Our main character, Willa, wears a rabbit, and it's like that's a prey animal, so it's very much like on alert, which is what she needs, you know. So it was very interesting how different people in different positions sort of had different masks that could kind of signal like what they were about. I did like that. And she finds a mask that's hawk, and like nobody knows about that. So it's like a new mask prototype. She thinks she's gonna be able to sell it for so much money, but then she has a weird connection to it. And so then this ends up being a story about like, what is personhood, you know, when we're dealing with AI and tech. And there's not a lot of books, so I don't want to say too much more about like what really goes down with that, but it does end up being a little bit of a romance between Willa and the mask. You know, feelings develop, and that's where we get all these interesting discussions of like what makes a person. And also then we have this dichotomy of like the mask having a consciousness. I'm just gonna let you know the mask basically has consciousness but not a body, and so like, is that a person? Versus Willa, who has worked so hard to, and she feels like she has had to like fight to get herself a body that feels correct. So she feels like very attached to her body because of how much work she's put into it. And whereas this mask is like, why do you even need bodies, you know? And she's like, because that's what you know, like affirms my gender in this horrible world. So that was pretty interesting. But I don't need to know what happens next. There was too much hacking in this, okay? Anytime anything, okay, let me just hack into it. Come on. There's a certain amount of hacking, unexplainable hacking that I will accept, but it doesn't make sense to me for this character to have these speed hacking capabilities in this setting, okay? I could not believe, like, the example that maybe annoyed me the most was like, they break into someone's like apartment and hack the doorknob so that it can't be opened from the other side, like real quick. Like, what do you mean you know, I don't buy it. I don't think in this world of, again, like augmented physicality and the mask, like I don't believe that hacking is like that easy. So that was my main complaint. And also I read it when I was not feeling very good, so that's my other complaint. But I had to find time. You know what? It was totally middle of the road for me, so that completes my June buzzword, okay? And that brings us to the end of the first 6 months of Buzzwordathon, and thus the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are excited to find out what the next 6 months of Buzzwordathon bring, and if you want to know what that's all about, you're gonna have to keep an eye on Kayla Ray Reed's channel tomorrow, or if you're not watching this the day that I publish it. You could go there right now and check it out. So we'll catch you there tomorrow. And I love you, Martine. And until next time, bye humans, bye!